All right, so I'm just going to, let me see. Okay, sorry, I'm already getting distracted. I start reading the chats. So I'm going to stay with the chats till the end. So anyway, so yeah, what I really, first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. For those that don't know me, my name is Adey-Jones, and I'm a 3 Principles practitioner. And I'm also the host of my YouTube and a podcast called Insightful Conversations, where I get to interview, and have done for the last couple of years now, some of the world's leading 3 Principles practitioners and teachers from all around the world. And that's something I love, something I do just to keep putting the information out there free of charge for people that want to learn more. So yes, that's me. And you know, people often ask, like, what makes you an expert in this field, you know, the field of codependency, narcissistic abuse. And as I've said before, poor Ingrid is going to get so sick and tired of me sharing this. But you know, I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not, you know, a psychologist, even though I should be. I've spent over 30 years in psychotherapy myself. But, you know, I did complete a master's in spiritual psychology. I have an educational background. But more than that, more important than that, is it's my life experience. And this is something that, you know, as I said, I grew up with this thinking, the codependent thinking that, you know, had me keep going into these narcissistic relationships, not showing up in life, you know, with this, with, you know, knowing who I really was, you know, really settling for less all my life. And that was, you know, a struggle. So I'm going to give you a brief, again, I keep apologizing to people who've heard this already, but, you know, my codependency started very early in life for me. I mean, I don't ever remember feeling any different, quite honestly. I was born in Wales, in the, that's in the UK, in 1959, very puritanical environment. My environment growing up was not puritanical. It was the complete opposite. My mum was a hippie before hippies were the vogue, I think. She was a very free-spirited woman and did anything she wanted, which included having affairs with married men. So I'm the product of an affair she had with my father, which was an 8-year affair. She had 3 children with him. And the most damaging part of that was that my father, for whatever reason, I'll never know, never acknowledged us. He never came to see us. He would visit my mum very late at night, once a week. And we were in bed. We lived in little caravans in the backyard because my mum had converted our home into a home for mentally handicapped people and mentally disabled. So he would visit her in her caravan and we would never see him. And then when I got to about 5 years old, I would pass him in the street going to the little village school with his real children. And it was quite traumatic. It was really traumatic. The whole neighborhood, I mean, the whole little village knew. We lived in the countryside, so we didn't have to face it every day, or at least my mother didn't. But going to school, we had to face the sort of judgment of the teachers and the community and the embarrassment. But again, it was the absolute, you know, if I did happen to catch a glance of him in the street, he would completely look the other way. He never spoke to us. I didn't meet him until I was turning 30 and thought, I've got to put an end to this. I've got to at least meet the man that's walked into every relationship I've ever had in my life, even though I've never spoken 2 words to him. But that feeling of not being good enough, of not being lovable, like if I was prettier or skinnier or cleverer or whatever it was, I had a laundry list of everything that was wrong with me, because if I hadn't been those things, he would have loved me and wanted to acknowledge me and have me be his child. And I carried that through life, never questioning it. I mean, it's insane to me now when I really step back and look. It was like, you know, of course it wasn't my fault, but in you know, growing up with that feeling, I think children want to, I often say it's like, if you can take the blame and you can change yourself, then you have some hope. And a lot of codependent do that. They keep working on themselves, hoping to have a different outcome. If I change, then my relationship will change. You know, and we're on this treadmill of improvement, self-improvement, got to figure it out. And what happens with that is it's, I think as a young child, you think, well, as I say, if I change myself, I'll affect a different outcome. And then you carry that through life. The other thing was the word illegitimate. It was so weird that I looked it up at a very young age, and it basically says that you're not legal. You know, you're not entitled to the same rights. And I took it to mean that I was less than, I was different, I was. I often used to think that I skidded in the back door. You know, my father's wife came to visit us when we were very little, and I got to witness that. And even in that moment, I felt terrible for her. I knew that my mother and I had done something terrible to hurt this woman like this. So anyway, so that's a little bit about my background. As I said, I grew up in a home for mentally handicapped people. By the time I was 9, my mum rented a big old rambling mansion, and we went from 10 mentally ill and mentally disturbed people living with us to approximately 55. So I often say it's like it was a combination of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest meets The Shining. We lived in this giant, great big mansion with chaos, and my mum didn't believe in separating us out from the residents. She had a separate residence, but the kids were all mingled. It was very dangerous. I felt very violated. And that was the other thing I wanted to mention. You know, growing up without a father, I was very needy for male attention. So as a very young child, I was always like this, and you know, and I was taken advantage of by men that spotted that neediness and took advantage of it. And again, so when you've suffered that type of abuse, you often carry that in life and feel that you're tainted or broken or there's something wrong with you. So anyway, that was my bag of tricks of all the codependent behavior I believed about myself. Oh, we have somebody else entering now. And hi RJ, I'm just, you can watch the video to, the recording rather, to get the first bit. But so anyway, so that was what set me up for a lifetime of being attracted to unavailable men, to the point that when I was 19, I wanted to kill myself. I just didn't think I was equipped to deal with the world. And again, it wasn't that there was something wrong with the world, there was something wrong with me, that I couldn't cope. Everybody else seemed to be able to cope and I couldn't. So fast forward, I came to the States when I was 21. I discovered this whole new way of life. I mean, it was just, I traveled. I'd lived in Spain for a year after I left college. But I came to California, came to LA in particular, and discovered this little bookshop called the Bodhi Tree. And I devoured every book in it, attended every workshop they promoted, from healing the shame that binds to, you know, reclaiming your shadow. And I studied everything from Buddhism to Hinduism to Kundalini yoga to, oh my God, Native American studies, ayahuasca retreats. I mean, anything I can get my hands on to fix myself. I was also in therapy, as I said, for close to 30 years. And I attended CODA meetings. I had 2 weeks in a residential treatment center for codependency. And I calculated how much I spent a couple of months back, and it was embarrassing. I would say close to $500,000 that I've spent over all those years trying to fix myself. And my therapist used to say that I knew more about codependency and narcissistic abuse than any mental health professional he knew. And he was right. I had studied it all. I knew the red flags, I knew the behaviors, I knew everything, but I was still trapped in that behavior. I just couldn't quite get out of it. Knew it all, but still had this drive in me or this thinking that kept getting me into narcissistic relationships or putting myself second, you know, to everything. So accepting crumbs in my life. So yeah, so I that's what I did. I was a coach in narcissism and codependency. as I say, in the room with me. You felt seen, heard, loved, supported, but I couldn't show you the way out. And then about 5 years ago, well, I'd first come across the principles in 2009 when I was going through my divorce, and it helped me immensely. It was one book, but I read this book going, oh my God, this is life-changing. It wasn't called the 3 Principles then, so I didn't know how to deepen my understanding, or as we call it, my grounding. So I came across it again in 2015. I was like, oh my God, I know this stuff. This changed my life or helped me a lot. But then it was really the beginning of 2016 that I really knew that it was called the 3 Principles, and it has a massive community, tons of teachers all around the world, hundreds of books and podcasts and YouTube videos that we can just learn from. So I immersed myself. I mentored with some of the greats, Elsie Spittle and Dickon Bettinger and the Pranskys, and I'm doing a mentorship with Michael Neal right now. So I'm constantly immersed in it. It's but it doesn't come from the place of there's something missing, I haven't got it yet. It comes from the place of languishing in this incredible feeling. And the more that I can just marinate in it, the more it just fills me up. So it's not coming from that place of lack that I was in for 40 years of, searching. It's got to be something out there that's going to help me. So now that I've brought us to the 3 Principles, I'll give you a little, for those that aren't that familiar with it, I know a few of you here are, but for those that aren't, I want to describe what they are. And I jokingly say they're not, people say to me, oh, they like the 4 agreements, but like one less. And I'm like, no, it's not like that. Or it's not the 7, habits of highly successful people. It's what it is it was an enlightening experience that somebody had in the 70s called Sydney Banks, where he saw how our human experience is created. Now, what I want to say first is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Sydney, I do not know why he did this. In Kabbalah, the math was a little easier. They would say that we're 1% in the world of physicality and 99% in the spiritual world. Sydney had 4% in our humanness, in our world of form, and 96% the spiritual realm. So either way, it's around that number. So I use my little Buddha snow globe here. I hope you can see it. So what we are at our center, at our core, is that spiritual essence. And from that place, we are all 100% equal. Everybody gets exactly the same amount of resilience that's within us, wisdom that's within us. We call it our inner GPS system. You might call it your gut, you might call it instinct, you might call it, whatever you want to call it. And we all have that resilience, that innate well-being that we're all born with. And yes, in our little physical expressions of our spiritual essence, we look a little different. We're short, fat, thin, tall, skinny, blue-eyed, brown-eyed, whatever it is, the differences are that show up. But that's just a tiny little bit of it. When we know that we're all equal at that inner, deeper level, I'd heard it, in all my spiritual trainings over the years, I'd always heard, yeah, we're all created equal. And I heard it here, but it never landed in me here. I never got what that really meant. And what the principles points to is so, so simple that it just sort of it was almost like everything just fell into place. And I was like, oh my God. And it went from being an intellectual understanding into really a feeling, a deep knowing from within my body, and a real unquestionable feeling, an experiential, thing that I had where it was unshakable. So what the principles points to is that we are sort of taught as young children, and I think this is all innocent, and it's a terrible misunderstanding. And Jack Pransky wrote a brilliant book going, why didn't anybody tell us this? And what it is we grow up, especially in the Western society. I think in Eastern society, it's more, we see this more clearly. But in the Western society, we truly believe that all of our experiences, all our feelings that we feel in life are coming from the outside in. whether it's our circumstances are making us feel a certain way, or the people in our life that are making us feel a certain way. And what the principles points to is there's a missing link. Sid wrote a book called The Missing Link, and the missing link is our thinking. We feel our thinking every second, every millisecond of every day. It is, we are constantly, this is our filter, and it's more than just perspective. Perspective suggests that there is an outside world out there that we all perceive in a slightly different way. But we still expect people to see what we're seeing. There's still that expectation, perceiving it slightly different, but there's an outside world there. What Sid's pointing to is that we really create our experience of life via our thinking about our circumstances and about the people. But it's ultimately, we feel our thinking. So depending on what's happening around us, we do live in a world of form. I'm not going to say it's all an illusion. It doesn't feel that way to me. Some people might say it's all an illusion. I feel that, life circumstances can push up against us and we can get a little battered and bruised by life, but it can't ever damage who we are at our essence. That spiritual essence that we are can never be touched. The human experience, that small 4% of us, yes, that can be touched. As I say, I went through things in life, as many of us did, that impacted me, but it didn't damage me. I mean, clearly I'm doing very, very well these days and have done for many years. Therapy definitely helped me, just didn't give me the complete freedom I was looking for. So I'm looking at a couple of notes here, so forgive me if I look down. I just want to make sure that I'm really addressing this. So human beings have anywhere from 60 to 100,000 thoughts a day, and we don't have any control over those thoughts that pop in our head. It's energy moving through us constantly. Now, what happens is we can have habitual thoughts, the ones we notice. I mean, I think it's something like we notice 5% of the thoughts we have. 95% of other thoughts we're not paying attention to. But if we grew up in an environment where we felt, damaged or less than about ourselves, we tend to notice those habitual patterns of, I'm not good enough, I can't do that, who am I? This is the best I can deserve, or whatever that little loop is. That's just a habitual thought. I used to have the habitual thoughts I just mentioned, not good enough and all those things. Now, I thought that those thoughts were telling me about me. They were reminding me of who I was. They were saying, yeah, but you've never achieved anything in the past. Why would you now? And it would be like, oh, okay. And I would live under that darkness of being less than. And once I understood that these thoughts are random and up for grabs for anybody, I was like, oh my God, they're not me. They're not telling me about me. Lots of people have these thoughts, but just don't even pay attention to them. I've paid attention to them and set up camp in my head. So once I saw that, I was able to not take them so seriously. They still kept happening. I'm not denying it. I mean, now they hardly happen at all. But in the beginning, they would still come in. But, I was taught that you just don't pay attention to them. Linda Pransky would often say, I sort of look up at because this is what I think of the personal mind, personal thinking. And she'd go, thanks for sharing. That's not very helpful. Then she'd get on with her day. And that's what we're talking about. People think we have to do mind control. We have to control our thinking. We don't. We can leave it alone. What we do is change our relationship to our thinking. So we just end up taking it lightly. We just don't listen to it. And often when you get into something, you try and manage and control it. You make it stay longer. And what we see in the principles is that any thought, it's energy moving through us, it will pass on. It just moves on its own accord. We might not like that it's there for a while, but it does move on without our effort. And as I say, the more effort, it's like going, if the water's rippling and we want the water to calm down, we don't go in there and say, calm down, calm down. We're just going to agitate it and get it all, moving again. So just as when we have this, we're at our spiritual essence in the center here, when we get those hundreds of thousands of thoughts that we get, that's what happens. We call it a thought storm, and it clouds our vision. And we forget who we are at our essence. So if we just don't do anything, notice that it's a thought storm, notice that it feels a little foggy right now, not the place to make decisions from or anything like that, we do eventually settle. And when we're settled, we get to really hear that wisdom that is ours, just for us, our wisdom, for our lives, not anybody else's. We don't have to ask for advice. We don't have to look for validation from people on the outside when we have that knowing that we are never damaged, never broken, perfect, whole, and complete at our center. This is where we feel love, peace, and joy. The only time we're ever going to feel other human emotions, which are perfectly fine and appropriate, as long as we don't pay too much attention to them, like fear, regret, anger, hurt, lust, greed, whatever those are, no judgment. That's what it is to be human. That's when we get to play with all the coloring crayons in our crayon box. We're not going to just say, oh no, I've got to have positive thoughts, got to have good thoughts. It's okay. It's just energy. We label it as good and bad. It's not. It's just energy moving through us. And so that's another thing. I'm going to I think that's enough on the principles, because I really want to make sure that I touch on what it is, the codependency traits and things like that. So just that you have an understanding, if you can even identify with any of that. But what happens for most of us that grow up like this is we suffer from low self-esteem. We feel, because we feel so weak and damaged in ourselves, we feel very dependent on other people. We often have a hole inside of us, this hole of emptiness, and we look for love and validation for people to fill that hole up. Again, a misunderstanding that we don't know that we are made of love. We are full of love already. I had an image of myself the other day when I was talking about this with somebody, that it's almost like standing in this lake full of crystal clear, beautiful water that you can just like scoop up and drink. And I would be standing in this lake of crystal clear, beautiful water with a cup saying, I'm thirsty, fill my cup up, not knowing that I was already in it. And that's how I was about love. I was desperately needy for love and validation, not realizing that I am made of love, and that my own validation is so much more important than anybody else telling me I'm beautiful or I'm great or I'm lovable or whatever it is. So really at the core of codependency is a fear of abandonment. We often got abandoned as a child. As I mentioned earlier, my own childhood, often children that grow up to be codependent grew up in a narcissistic environment with a narcissistic parent. They suffered abuse or abandonment and neglect. But there can also be some subtleties in there too. Just even the old parenting style used to be, for my children to be a good, healthy, well-mannered child, I need to shame them into behaving a certain way, and shame is so toxic. And we take that on as a child, and we just, plant it somewhere deep inside us and live from that place of there's something wrong with me. So what we do, we trained, as I say early on, that if our parents withdraw their love or approval from us because we've misbehaved, and a normal thing that children do, we immediately sort of negate ourselves and keep looking for that approval. And we take that into our adult lives. We become people pleasers. It's like we become needless and wantless, because we constantly feel that our survival depends on another person. And again, I want to go back for a second on the 3 principles of when we feel that love is coming from the outside in, we will do anything to secure that love. Because my God, if we're dependent on that love, You know, we negate ourselves. We put up with settling for breadcrumbs. We tolerate painful relationships. We lose ourselves because we think the love is coming from the outside in. When we get that our love is coming from within us, that it rights the ship. We then go, oh my God. And what happens then, it changes the dynamics of our relationships. You know, when we're needy in a relationship, we lose ourselves. When we want to be in a relationship with somebody, we have that power comes into that relationship with us. That self-assurance of, you know, we're coming here to share and exchange our love. But it's, you know, it's like, it's a very, it's a beautiful place in a relationship to come from. It's like, I want to be with you. I desire this relationship. There's a strength and power in that. And then if for any reason it's not in alignment, you can leave. You can say, you know what, this is not fitting right now. But when there's a need and a belief system that I can't survive without you, you tolerate abuse. So that's a really important thing to see in codependency. As I said, we have weak boundaries. Our boundaries have been violated as children. We were often felt we didn't even have a right to our own bodies, and we can take that into our adult relationships. We can have sex when we don't want to because we fear, again, losing somebody. So we're attracted to other broken people. You know, it's like, I know that for me, I was like, oh no, unless you've been through enough equal amount of stuff I've been through, we don't fit, we don't meet. You know, you won't understand me, but I understand you if you're broken too. Plus, it helps take the focus off us if we're focusing on somebody else, helping somebody else if they have an addiction, a substance abuse or gambling or sex or whatever it is, but just some type of addictive behavior. We can fix them. We're fixers. You know, we grew up fixing other people, fixing our parents, you know, being little, you know, we're parentified as young children. It's like, we'll parent you. Your needs are more important than mine. Well, that's an imbalance there. Children are needy. They need unconditional love. They need validation. They need to feel safe. So when you abandon your child because they're not, you know, if you have a narcissistic parent, they will abandon you if you don't reflect well on them because they see you as an extension of them. You know, it's like unless you make me look good, then, you know, I'll just withdraw my love and affection from you. It's another very, very painful thing. We also codependents tend to take things personally. You know, we feel responsible for other people's feelings. We were told, my mum used to say to me when I was little, you're driving me crazy and I can't cope. And as I said, we had, you know, she had 7 children of her own, 55 mentally ill people. That is 62 people to take care of. She could not tolerate her children having needs and wants. You know, she was in survival mode. She had no father. How do I make money? How do I do this? And her thinking was the mentally ill and mentally handicapped people were more needy than her children, which basically just told us all to become, you know, raving nutcases so we get her attention, whether it was drugs, alcohol, killing ourselves, or, you know, anorexia or whatever it was we indulged in to get her attention. But again, you know, that's the meaning I made of it. For me to stay close to my mother, which was my survival, she was the only source of you know, I didn't have a father, so it was like I was terrified of losing her and losing her approval. So I was very needless and wantless. Also, the other thing besides the fear of abandonment is shame. We have deep, deep, deep shame. Shame about feeling unlovable. Shame about having been abandoned, shame about being abused, a shame about not measuring up, and shame that develops into adulthood of the judgment we have of ourselves for putting up with abusive relationships that are one-way streets. You know, we're putting more effort into the relationship than our partner is. So I think that's pretty much, I think I've covered that there. So signs that you're in, well, first of all, I'll talk about narcissistic traits. And again, as three principles teachers, I might not have said this, I usually say it, we're not labeling or diagnosing anybody. We know that anybody can be different if they see something differently. This goes for codependence. The beauty with people with codependency is they're constantly looking to fix themselves. So it's easier for them to see something differently. For somebody that suffers from narcissism, their defense mechanism is so tightly, wound. Their armor, their persona they've created of strength and impenetrable, confidence in themselves, that they don't have the ability to self-reflect. But they still both people come from a wounded place inside. The codependent is very obvious what they see as wrong with them. The narcissist, no, they don't have the strength even to look inside. They often look stronger than codependents, but the irony is they're actually weaker. They're more fear-driven. They're more frightened and vulnerable, but they just can't look there. So, as I've mentioned, the narcissist can show up in your life in a myriad of different ways. Often, if we're codependent, we have had a narcissistic parent, as was the case in mine. I got two for one. My father was definitely a narcissist. He, to not have to do what he did, just not to his own family, his wife and his children, but to have such a blatant affair with my mother and to just not have any feeling of even wanting connection with the children he had with my mother. Clearly, he was a narcissist. My mother was a narcissist too, because she had total disregard for her behavior, either on his family, on us, on anything. So, I grew up in definitely sandwiched between two there. So it could be your boss, it could be your partner, as I said, it couldn't be your adult child. We don't ever diagnose people before the early 20s from suffering from codependency, because people change, and it's natural for teenagers to be self-centered and omnipotent and all that stuff. So so we definitely don't. But your friends can be, your co-workers, all different people can show up in your life besides your intimate partner. But these are some traits of narcissism. There are usually three categories of narcissists. There's the overt, the covert, and the malignant. They share some of these traits that I'm going to read to you now. Not all of them sometimes, and sometimes it's harder because we tend to know about the overt ones, the classic traits, but the covert can be really sneaky, and it can really it can really affect, it's sneaky. So, and the malignant is pretty obvious too. Again, sneaky sometimes, but so damaging, you can see that. So first of all, one of the main traits is that they feel superior to anybody else. Nobody is as successful or as intelligent or as special as they are. They can be extremely charismatic, charming, and seductive. A total, it's like a moth to flames, for somebody that feels so, has low self-esteem, these charismatic people can be so attractive. They exude confidence and power and things that we lack. I know from my thinking used to be, oh my God, you complete me. I'm the sensitive one and the loving one, but I don't have confidence and I don't have power and I don't have charisma. So I'll look for it in my partner. That's what I would often be attracted to. They excessively concerned with image and status again. And if you're with a narcissist, you better look good and make them look good. So that's a requirement. They need constant amounts of praise and adoration. Probably one of the most common ones is they lack empathy. They have an inability to see things from another's perspective. It's quite sad to say, but people are objects to them, and they've done studies in this. They've done brainwave studies of people that narcissistic people in prisons and sociopaths. They see people as objects. There's not that emotional connection. It's you're there to serve them. very selfish and self-centered. It's all about them. They have an inflated sense of self, which is complete opposite of the codependent, which makes it such a perfect fit. The rules do not apply to them. Rules are for little people, you know, for ordinary people. So they're often, they have an ability to fly slightly under the radar so they don't get caught, but they are breaking rules left, right, and center. They are controlling, very controlling. They intermittently withhold love and approval. You know, you're on the pedestal, you're off the pedestal, you're on the pedestal, you're off it. And that is called intermittent reinforcing, which can actually create a chemical dependency. It's like rats. I think they did these studies where rats would just keep tapping this thing to get their drug to the point of death. Because there's something with the wiring that happens when it's not like you can count on it, so you relax, you're hyper vigilant, you're always waiting, you know, walking on eggshells and waiting for that little, you know, little offering of love and affection. They're highly sensitive to criticism, and again, like I said, that armor that they've created, it's like, God, if you dare poke or see a little chink in it, you'll have your head bitten off, literally. They're unable to regulate their emotions. They have, well, not everyone, because I'm just going to go into the covert. These are more the overt ones here, but often volatile, you know, always blaming other people. You know, either it's you, like you made me do it, you know, you make me this way, or, you know, everybody's an idiot, they don't get it. But they have this victim mentality that they justify their outrageous behavior. They can bully and intimidate. As I said, they never take responsibility. They're always projecting blame onto others. So those are the real things. Now with a covert, it's so much sneakier, because often it's this victim that comes through, like, you know, they have a terrible past, they've had bad marriages, nobody understood them, or they've gone through a slew of different jobs and they keep getting fired, but the boss is an idiot, and they're this and they're this. So they're more, and a lot of people come from covert narcissists have heavy addictions. You know, that's the excuse for their behavior, and then they'll blame it on their childhood. And so they're not really taking responsibility for themselves, and they're sucking a lot of energy from other people. But it's a different way of showing up. As I say, it doesn't show up in that grandiosity. It shows up in a save me, more of a victim place. Now, some of the signs that you're in a narcissistic relationship are usually the beginning. The beginning is usually, oh my God, like the best fairy tale that you ever had in your life. It's called love bombing. They have a picture of their ideal mate. And when they meet you, it's like, oh my God, you're the love of my life. You're what I've been dreaming for. You're what I've been looking for all my life. I found you. And if you are like me, you're a little susceptible to flattery. And I believe that. And it's like a love you've never had before. It's so it's just so over the top. But what happens is they move fast. If they think you're the one, they want to marry you fast. They want to secure you. That wedding, you know, or engagement ring is on your hand. They want to move in really fast. They want to buy a house together very fast. They want you to have a baby very fast. Whatever it is, it's fast. It's very fast. Beware. So once you're in, then the on the pedestal, off the pedestal starts happening. That's the adoration, and then the nitpicking. And then when they feel they may have nitpicked a little too hard and they're pushing you away, adoration again. And you're always, you know, you want what you had in the beginning. It felt like heroin, for God's sake, or whatever other drug. It was like, no, I want that feeling. So you stay around. Because of, again, that intermittent reinforcement, it's like, you know, if you stay long enough, you're going to get back up there. You feel you're living with a Jekyll and Hyde, you know, very moody, Mr. Loving 1 minute and your worst aggressive attacker the next minute. As I said, you're walking on eggshells, afraid of when you're going to say the wrong thing that's going to ignite some type of explosive reaction, or sometimes they're just stony silence, the sulking treatment, the withdrawal, the passive aggressiveness. If you feel dominated and controlled, sometimes, you know, in a marriage, certainly in some of, I don't talk about marriage, my marriage here rather, but let's just say some people, if they have relinquished control over the finances, finances can be used to control and to make you feel like a child in the relationship. If you feel like, you know, it's their way or the highway, that your needs and desires are not important to them, that's again something that can happen. You've also got to remember, if you are codependent, you probably came into the relationship, you know, professing to be needless and wantless, and that's what they like, because they want to just have it all be all about them. And as any relationship, any healthy relationship, you start sort of, you know, it's reciprocal. You take care of each other, you know. But for a narcissist, that's like, no way. It's not what I signed up for. You came into this relationship pretending you were needless and wantless, and you better get back there. Again, this need for adoration is massive. When you first meet somebody, you're in throes of infatuation and you see everything that's great about the other person. But slowly over time, you start seeing their human frailties, and you start revealing your own human frailties. And that's what's so beautiful and intimate. That's what creates intimacy, is when you're vulnerable and you feel safe with the other person to just show all of who you are. And it goes equal ways. And then a deep intimacy and a deep love occurs. Well, that's not possible with a narcissist. Their armor is up. They don't want to reveal their insecurities or their vulnerabilities. And what happens is they will need to have that fix that they got in the first part of the relationship with you. I hate to say it, but more often than not, narcissists are cheating. They feel entitled to get their needs met elsewhere if they're not getting it in the relationship. They need that feed, that constant, as I say, adoration. And the only way they can get it is usually in the throes of the newness of a new affair. So that is very common. If you feel that I often say, if you feel that you're their secretary, their nursemaid, their mother, you know, you're often with a narcissist, because again, basic needs to be taken care of in life are beneath them. You know, it's do this for me, do that for me. You know, my needs come first, mother me. Sometimes they try and separate you from your family and friends. That's on the really extreme end. They want complete control. They gaslight you. Again, something, I'll use the affairs for example. We know when something's going on. Our wisdom is telling us. What happens up here is we have the fear and everything going on here. So sometimes we try and dismiss what we know inside. We try and override it, because this is where fear lives. And fear will be like, oh God, no, you can't, don't push them away. Don't confront them. Don't get suspicious. It might mean you have to leave. So we rationalize and we minimize and we go into denial. And there's nothing wrong with that, but just to know that that is happening. But what ends up happening, that's called cognizant dissonance. We have competing forces in us. We have this mind that's trying to rationalize things away, plus them telling us we're crazy if we say, this feels like something's happening here. And you've got your own wisdom screaming at you, no, what you're seeing is true, what you're feeling is true. So that can make people in narcissistic relationships feel like they're going crazy, which is very, very painful. And often if the relationship does end, you feel discarded completely. There is absolutely zero emotional connection left. You're done being of use to them. They can just, that's it, done. And it's mind-blowing, and it can be so painful, especially if you have children together and you've had a life together and you're like, you know, didn't I mean anything? Didn't any of this mean something? So that's what you can end up feeling like. I'll talk a bit about the 6-week program. The first week is in depth into the principles, because that is the foundation. Unless you really, really get the principles, you will always be operating from a feeling of lack. And I can't stress that enough. When that feeling comes up in for you, when you feel full of confidence and love, I used to think it all came from the outside in. I'll get another qualification, I'll do this, I'll find another partner, I hopped from partner to partner to partner, thinking that I would die if I didn't have love, never knowing I was swimming in it. But once that you really feel from that place, all this, knowing about codependency, knowing about narcissism, knowing about it, everything starts making sense, and you can just let it go. So the first week is definitely the 3 principles. Second week, in depth into the codependency, the behaviors, how it shows up in all areas of our life. Third week is narcissism. Again, what leads, what the childhood trauma is, that, or some people think it's, just hereditary or environmental too, but traumas that can lead to narcissistic personality disorder, plus the society we live in. We live in a narcissistic society. So I go deep into that. Now, week 4 is all those signs. Again, I flick through them right now, but the gaslighting, the walking on eggshells, the flying monkeys, the love bombing, the love addiction is massive. It's called trauma bonding. So we'll go all into that. And then the week 5 is, should I stay or should I go? Not everybody can go. Some people have to stay behind for financial reasons, children, whatever it is. But there are definitely things that you can learn to how to leave in peace, or how to stay in peace, or more peace than you are currently experiencing. And then the 6-week one is, week 6 rather, is creating happy and healthy relationships. Whether you stay to, I always say, don't use all of this thinking you're going to change your partner. Part of staying with your narcissistic partner is to accept 100% that the likelihoods of them changing is very, very little. They don't have the incentive to change. It's not that they can't, they don't have the incentive. And they're usually, their habits and thinking are so ingrained at that point. They think they're winning. Why would you change anything if you're winning? You're dominating and controlling and getting all what you think are your needs met. What they're missing out on is real love, real intimacy, real connection. I mean, it's heartbreaking. I have compassion. Parents that are narcissistic, their children don't want to remain in contact with them, or very limited. And I say I have compassion. If they may not know what they're missing, but if they knew what they were missing, they would choose to see something differently. But us telling them will never have them change. They have to want to for themselves. So the sixth week is, if you have left and you're looking for a new relationship, it's really helpful to have tools, as I tried not to use the word tools, but yeah, the understanding with the principles of how you can show up in a relationship that you will never find yourself in that dynamic again. You will never find yourself feeling less than, feeling used, feeling disrespected. That is a thing of the past. And again, that relationship can be with how you show up at work, how you show up with your friends, with your children even. Because codependency, if you don't watch out for it, you can leave your codependent partner, and then all of a sudden you're acting codependent with your children. So it's really, really important. We change partners and we'll keep getting the same thing in again if we haven't looked at our part in it. So I'd love to open, I went a bit long, sorry about that, but I'd love to open it up for questions, and I can stay on, so we're not in a hurry here. So anybody, just unmute yourself if you have a question. I'd love to hear from you. Let me see, from Ingrid, let me see what she said. Oh, how do we develop narcissism? Well, again, as I say, some people say that it's that it's hereditary. I'm not sure, or some people say it's environmental. I'm not sure. I just know that the beautiful thing about the principles is we don't judge people. We don't make them bad or wrong. So, and I love that. So I don't look at the people that showed up as narcissists in my life as bad or wrong. My mother did the best she could with her thinking and her level of consciousness. She didn't, I don't think she ever had children. She certainly didn't have 7 children to punish them, or she grew up in an environment where she didn't receive, I believe, adequate love. And she didn't get love from either one of her parents. My grandparents were totally unavailable emotionally. I witnessed that myself. I thought they hated me, but apparently they, you know, I used to think it was just my mother's children they hated because we were illegitimate, or some of us were. And apparently, no, my older siblings that were, you know, from a marriage, they said, oh no, you know, Nine and Ty just hate children. They hate them. And so they hated their own children. And so my mother suffered that. And I think she just developed a way of coping. She had this bottomless pit in her for love and admiration, adoration. I think she had, yeah, I mean, clearly, I mean, the people that live with us, you know, the 55 patients adored her. You know, we used to have a joke. We used to call her Mother, Father, God when we grew up, because she was an atheist and she was our mother and our father and our God. But I know she was doing the best she could. So yeah, in an environment, it's often, you know, a lack of love or overindulgence, over loving, over praising, getting that child addicted to hearing that. I'm not talking about unconditional love. Unconditional love is I love you no matter what. I can correct you and I can say that this is not appropriate, but my love is not conditional. I love you no matter what. So if they have a parent that's a narcissist whose love is conditional, they learn, oh, if I emulate my parent, if I am exactly like that narcissistic parent, then I keep that bond. I stay connected. I stay loved. They think that's love. So they can develop it from that. They can develop it, as I said, from neglect and abuse. They can develop it from overindulgence. They can develop it from a parent that is so enmeshed with them and overpowering that they can't bear it. They just got it, oh, you know, the parents sucking their energy. So they push people away and they become robotic. They're often in that, if you have an overbearing mother like that's looking to get her emotional needs met from a male child, that male child will often grow up, you know, having a very, very, a dislike of women, a mistrust of women. They'll push women away, you know, and that again will lead to multiple partners. So I don't get too close, so that I won't engage full on with my heart. So there's lots of things that can enter into this, but it's not, you know, 1 and 1 makes 2, because clearly, you know, not all abusers become abusers. And so these are factors that, as I say, we live in the world of form, you know, they push up against us, and they can, you know, we can have thinking about that we then take on board. To be truthful, during my 20s, I showed up as quite narcissistic, even though I'm terribly codependent, or was growing up. But in my 20s, I thought that if I was more of a love 'em and leave 'em type of person, that I would have the control in the relationship. And it looked like it was working until I hit about 29. So I had a good few years of appearing very narcissistic, and it appeared that way. But I was very vulnerable on the inside, and I knew it, and I knew I was faking it. I wanted to just bare my soul and wear my heart on my sleeve, but I was playing games because I was trying to survive. So I hope that answered your question, Ingrid. So let me see if I have any others here. Does anybody else have any questions? You can either put them in the chat if you don't want to speak, or just unmute yourself. No? Okay. I'll give you another couple of minutes. We've got another couple of minutes here. So, yeah, and some people, oh, this is a classic. I can't tell you how many codependent people come to me and say, I think I'm a narcissist. I was told I was a narcissist by my partner or whatever. I have to laugh at that, because if you are self-reflective enough to say, could I be a narcissist? 99% of the time you're not, because you're actually, again, looking to take responsibility, looking to see your part in something. You know, somebody that's really full-blown narcissist would just be like, you know, not me. No, I'm just normal. So that is a something I see a lot. Trying to think what else to touch on here. And again, there's no shame, as I said, that, you know, we're not labeling, and nobody's less than. You know, we're all doing the best we can as human beings. And you know, if you have narcissistic tendency or codependent tendencies, it's just thinking. It's just thinking that took root at a certain point in your life that's not helpful to you. It's not helping you have warm, loving, intimate relationships. And we are constantly have blind spots. You know, and that's what I love about the three principles of understanding. This is not spiritual bypass. This is not, I'm trying to attain this level of being and leave my humanness behind. It's like, no, embrace your humanness. It's wonderful to be human. It's lovely to be quirky and different, and you know, it's a blessing. It's a gift that we got given this life. It's just to embrace it fully. But when we try and get this level of spiritual, you know, attainment that we're not going to feel what it is like to be human, no, I can do that when I'm dead. I want to feel all of it. I want to feel my spiritual nature and my human nature, all one, all completely embrace it, love it. Oh, Sabrina, sorry, thank you. Okay, sorry. How do we identify when we are being codependent and then shift it? I think, I'm not sure if I'm reading it correctly. Well, I think, you know, as I said, when we go into it a lot deeper, you'll be going, oh God, that's me. Oh God, that's me. But for me, as I said, even though I ended my narcissistic relationships, I could see that I was narcissistic. I'm sorry, I was codependent with my children. And when I saw that they had the same resilience and well-being in them that I have in me, I stopped being a know-it-all and having to take care of them. It was like, whoa, hang on a minute, that's a little egotistical. Okay, I'll address that in a minute, Sabrina. Yeah, I saw that they have everything they need inside of them too, just like I did, just like everybody else did. That was massive. The other huge one for me is after a very long-term relationship with a narcissist, I was still going to therapy 5 years later, talking about I couldn't believe what happened and how I was being treated and everything like that. And when I really got the principles, I was like, oh God, separate realities. I've been wasting all this time trying to figure out what was going through their head. Now that I know that we all live in these little thought-created bubbles with our own thinking that's making us behave in a certain way, I was like, oh God, their behavior had nothing to do with me. Their cheating had nothing to do with me. They had thinking that made them feel that it was appropriate to do that. I let that go. I was like, oh my God, I've been carrying that burden because it was pretty extreme. That it meant something about me, and I could release it. So that was a massive sign that I was, you know, less codependent. As I said, the way I showed up with my children, I don't have to control their emotions. If they're in a down place, I give them the space. I love them unconditionally. I don't have to fix them. I don't have to move their emotional experience along. It will go off on its own accord. My job is just to be there and hold them and love them. Some other ways that showed up for me. Yeah, asking for what I want in life, not pretending to be needless and wantless. You know, if somebody owes me money now, I say, excuse me, I think you forgot to pay me back, in a very nice way. I cannot tell you how I would be lending money, and then I would be like, oh God, it's too embarrassing, I don't want to ask for it back. And now it's like, no, you're worth it. It's okay. You can ask for what you deserve. You can ask for your money back. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Sheldon, for joining us. And okay, and Sabrina, let's talk about that. Definitely, we will be covering, as I say, much more of this in the 6 weeks. We do go deeper. Sometimes I have people that participate both in the program, because it's in a group, it's so amazing. You might not be able to see your own stuff, but boy, when you're in a group and you hear from other people, it's like, oh God, I see myself. So that's the beauty of a group dynamic. But sometimes one-on-one coaching is really, really important as well. So that's something we can talk about. But anyway, I'm going to draw to an end here. I hope that this was helpful, and thank you for joining me, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.